They want to turn me into a monster. But they forgot I know how to fight back.
The text message arrived at 3:47 a.m., glowing like a digital ghost in my darkened bedroom. I'd been lying awake for hours anyway, staring at the ceiling and listening to Miranda's steady breathing beside me. Sleep had become a stranger since I'd started noticing the little things. The way she guarded her phone, the mysterious late meetings, the new lingerie that never seemed to make an appearance at home. Don't let your kids go to school tomorrow. Trust me. You'll understand by 10 a.m. Ron. Ron Kowalski lived next door, a 20-year veteran of our small city's police force. He wasn't the type for pranks or drama. If Ron was texting me at nearly 4 in the morning, something was seriously wrong. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Miranda, and padded to the kitchen. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the silence with its familiar rhythm. Outside, our street looked peaceful enough, the Hendersons' porch light casting long shadows across their pristine lawn. Mrs. Blevins' cat prowling through the flower beds she spent half her Social Security check maintaining. This was Millbrook, Ohio, population 47,000 and shrinking. The kind of place where everyone knew your business before you did. Where the high school football team was still living off a championship from 1987. And where the biggest scandal in recent memory was when the mayor's wife got caught shoplifting wine from Kroger. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a work email. Another customer complaining about delivery delays at my small auto parts business. 20 years I'd been building that company from nothing, and lately it felt like everything was falling apart. Suppliers were unreliable, customers were impatient, and my biggest competitor had just opened a new location 10 minutes away. You're up early. Miranda's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway wearing the blue silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas. Her auburn hair perfectly tousled in that way that used to drive me crazy. Couldn't sleep, I said, not mentioning the text. Coffee key. She shook her head. I've got that presentation today, remember? The Morrison account? She moved past me to grab a bottle of water from the fridge, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. Since when did she wear perfume to bed? Right, the big one. I'd heard about the Morrison account for weeks. Miranda worked as a senior marketing coordinator for Pinnacle Solutions, a consulting firm that had been growing rapidly. She'd been putting in long hours, weekend meetings, business dinners that stretched past midnight. Derek thinks we've got a real shot at landing them, she continued, checking her phone. This could be huge for my career. Derek Hastings. I'd met him exactly once at the company Christmas party 6 months ago. Tall, polished, with the kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about money. He drove a BMW, wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and had a way of looking right through people like me. That's great, honey. The words tasted like sawdust. What time will you be home? Late, probably. Derek wants to go over everything one more time after the presentation. She was already heading back upstairs. Don't wait up. I sat alone with my coffee, watching the sun creep over the horizon and thinking about Ron's message. By 7:30, I'd made my decision. When Sophie and Max came down for breakfast, I was ready. No school today, I announced, flipping pancakes with perhaps too much enthusiasm. What? Sophie, 15 and perpetually outraged by everything I did, stared at me like I'd suggested we all join the circus. Dad, I have a chemistry test. And I've got baseball tryouts, Max added, already in his uniform. Trust me on this one. We're having a family day. Mom, Sophie called upstairs. Dad's being weird again. Miranda appeared a few minutes later, dressed in her power suit, the black one that meant serious business. What's this about? I couldn't exactly explain Ron's cryptic warning without sounding paranoid. Just thought it would be nice. When's the last time we all spent a day together? Tom, I don't have time for this. The kids need to be in school and I need to be at work. She grabbed her briefcase and keys. We'll talk about family time later. After she left, I called both kids in sick and spent the morning pacing, checking news websites, and texting Ron for more information. He didn't respond. At 9:07 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications, news alerts, text messages, missed calls. The headline on Channel 7's website made my blood run cold. Gas leak forces emergency evacuation at Millbrook High School. I called Ron immediately. This time he answered. You got my message, he said without preamble. How did you know? Anonymous tip came in around midnight. Someone called in a potential gas line issue. We had to take it seriously. His voice was grim. Thing is, Tom, the tip mentioned your name specifically. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Caller said they saw you near the school's utility area yesterday evening. Said you looked suspicious, like you might be tampering with something. That's insane. I wasn't anywhere near the school yesterday. I know that. I also know you've got no reason to hurt kids, especially your own. But someone wants people to think you do. The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. The late nights, the mysterious meetings, the way Miranda had been distant and cold. Derek's confident smile, the perfume at bedtime. Ron, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Shoot, if someone wanted to destroy my reputation, maybe set me up for something, how would they do it? There was a long pause. Tom, what aren't you telling me? So I told him about Miranda's behavior, about Derek, about the growing certainty that my marriage was a sham and my life was being systematically dismantled. When I finished, Ron was quiet for a long moment. Meet me at Murphy's bar tonight, 8 o'clock. And Tom, watch your back. Murphy's bar occupied the corner of Main and 3rd, a testament to Millbrook's faded blue-collar glory. The neon Budweiser sign flickered intermittently, and the parking lot was more pothole than pavement. It was exactly the kind of place where a man could drink his troubles away without judgment. Ron was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and staring at the Cubs game on the ancient television above the bar. He looked older than his 52 years, gray stubble covering his jaw, eyes that had seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. You look like hell, he said as I slid onto the adjacent stool. Feel worse. I ordered a whiskey, neat. Tell me about the gas leak. No leak. Maintenance crew found nothing wrong with the lines. Whoever called it in either made a mistake or was lying. He turned to face me. The caller was female, Tom, middle-aged, educated, said she was concerned about the safety of the children. The whiskey burned going down. Did you trace the call? Burner phone. Bought with cash 3 days ago at the Walmart on Route 9. Ron's expression was grim. Someone planned this. And they specifically mentioned me? Said they saw Tom Brennan acting suspicious near the utility building around 6 p.m. Tuesday. Described your truck perfectly, down to the dent in the rear bumper. Tuesday evening, I'd been at the shop until nearly 8, working on inventory. My assistant Jake could verify that, along with the security cameras. But the fact that someone knew those details about my truck was unsettling. There's something else, Ron continued. I did some digging on your wife's colleague, Derek Hastings. And? Guy's got a history. This isn't his first workplace romance. Last job in Columbus, he got involved with a married coworker there too. Husband found out, made some threats, and suddenly, the husband was facing maltreatment charges. Derek's girlfriend backed up his story, said her husband was unstable, potentially dangerous. My hand tightened around the glass. What happened? Divorce. Husband lost custody of his kids, had to pay alimony, lost his job when the story got out. Last I heard, he was working construction in Cleveland, living in a studio apartment. Jesus. Gets better. Derek's current wife, yeah, he's married, filed a police report 2 months ago. Someone had been following her, leaving threatening notes on her car. She suspected it was connected to Derek's work, maybe a disgruntled client. The bar suddenly felt too small, too warm. You think Derek's setting me up? I think Derek's got a pattern, and I think your wife might not realize what she's gotten herself into. Ron finished his beer. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I drove home through empty streets, my mind racing. The house was dark except for the porch light Miranda always insisted on leaving on. Her car wasn't in the driveway, another late night at the office. Inside, I found Sophie and Max in the living room, watching Netflix and sharing a bowl of popcorn. For a moment, seeing them safe and happy, I almost convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe Miranda was just going through a midlife crisis. Maybe Derek was just an ambitious colleague. Maybe the anonymous tip was from some neighborhood busybody who'd seen me drive past the school. Dad? Sophie looked up from her phone. Why didn't we really go to school today? I sat down between them on the couch. Sometimes grown-ups get feelings that something isn't right. Today was one of those days. But you were right, Max said. There was a gas leak. Yeah, buddy, I was right. Sophie studied my face with the intensity that reminded me so much of her mother. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit like a physical blow. Why would you ask that? She's been different lately, staying out late, always on her phone, and you've been sad. She shrugged with teenage nonchalance, but I could see the worry in her eyes. My friend Chloe's parents got divorced last year. It started the same way. I pulled both kids closer. Your mom and I are going through a rough patch. But whatever happens, we both love you guys more than anything in the world. That will never change. Promise? Max's voice was small. Promise. After they went to bed, I sat in my home office and did something I'd never imagined myself doing. I started investigating my own wife. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess. Sophie's birthday, followed by Max's initials. It worked on the third try. What I found made me sick. Email chains with Derek that started professional and gradually became personal. Lunch meetings that turned into afternoon strategy sessions at the Marriott downtown. Photos she'd sent him. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough to make my hands shake. The worst part wasn't the affair itself, it was the cold calculation behind it. In one email, Derek laid out a detailed plan for Miranda's career advancement, contingent on landing the Morrison account. In another, he mentioned his difficult situation at home and how they needed to be careful until he could handle his wife. But it was the final email thread that made my blood run cold. Derek had sent Miranda articles about parental alienation, custody battles, and domestic violence allegations. His message was brief. Just some research. Better to be prepared. Miranda's response was even shorter. Tom's been acting strange lately. More aggressive, the kids have noticed. I stared at the screen, feeling the walls of my life closing in. They weren't just having an affair. They were building a case against me. The gas leak tip was just the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Miranda. Working very late tonight. Don't wait up. Big day tomorrow. I screenshot every email, every photo, every damning piece of evidence, and uploaded them to a secure cloud account. If Derek and Miranda wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I had ammunition. But as I closed the laptop and headed upstairs, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. If they were willing to file false reports and manipulate a potential school emergency for their scheme, what else were they capable of? The next morning brought unseasonably warm weather and a phone call that changed everything. I was in the garage, pretending to organize tools while actually planning my next move, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Millbrook Police Department. Mr. Brennan, this is Detective Lisa Park. I need you to come down to the station for a few questions regarding yesterday's incident at the high school. My mouth went dry. Am I under arrest? No, sir. Just some routine follow-up. Would 11 o'clock work for you? I agreed, then immediately called Ron. He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail asking him to meet me at the station. Whatever was happening, I didn't want to face it alone. The Millbrook Police Department occupied a converted bank building downtown, all marble floors and high ceilings that made every footstep echo. Detective Park was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of my old high school principal. Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming in. She led me to a small interview room that smelled like industrial disinfectant and desperation. I want to ask you about Tuesday evening. Can you tell me where you were between 5 and 7 p.m.? At my shop. Brennan Auto Parts on Industrial Drive. I was doing inventory. Anyone who can verify that? My assistant, Jake Morrison, was there until about 6:30, and we have security cameras. She made notes on a yellow pad. The reason I'm asking is we received a tip that you were seen near Millbrook High School around 6 p.m., specifically near the utility building where the gas lines are located. That's impossible. I was nowhere near the school. The caller was very specific about the details. Said they recognized your truck. Blue Ford F-150 with a dent in the rear bumper and a Support Our Troops sticker. Half the trucks in Millbrook matched that description, but I didn't point that out. Detective, I think someone is trying to set me up. Why would someone do that? So I told her. About Miranda's affair, about Derek's history, about the emails I'd found. Detective Park listened without interruption, her expression giving nothing away. Mr. Brennan, these are serious allegations. Do you have any proof of this affair? Screenshots of emails, photos, shots, hotel receipts I found in my wife's purse. And you accessed your wife's computer without her permission? The question felt like a trap. It's our shared household computer. I see. And when did you discover this alleged affair? 2 days ago, the same day as the anonymous tip about the gas leak. I saw where this was heading. Detective, I'm the one who kept my kids home from school. If I was planning something, why would I protect them? Maybe you had second thoughts. Maybe the plan went wrong. She leaned back in her chair. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to be straight with you. The timing here is very coincidental. You discover your wife's affair, and suddenly there's a school emergency that makes you look like a hero for keeping your kids home. You think I called in the tip myself? I think you're going through a difficult time, and sometimes people make poor decisions when they're emotional. The door opened, and Ron walked in, looking official in his uniform. Detective Park, sorry to interrupt. Mr. Brennan, you asked me to meet you here? Officer Kowalski. Detective Park's tone cooled noticeably. This is a private interview. Oh, Tom's a friend and neighbor. Figured he might want some moral support. Ron's smile was friendly, but his eyes were hard. Hope that's not a problem. Actually, it is, Mr. Brennan. If you'd like to have an attorney present, that's your right. But I can't have other officers sitting in on interviews. I don't need a lawyer, I said quickly. I haven't done anything wrong. Ron caught my eye and shook his head slightly. Tom, maybe you should think about that. Officer Kowalski, I need to ask you to leave, Detective Park said firmly. After Ron left, the interview continued for another 20 minutes. Detective Park asked about my marriage, my business, my relationship with the school district. Every question felt designed to paint me as unstable, desperate, potentially dangerous. Finally, she closed her notebook. Mr. Brennan, I want to be clear about something. Filing false reports is a felony. If we discover that you made that anonymous call, you'll be facing serious charges. I didn't make any call. I hope not, for your sake and your family's. She stood up. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. Outside the station, Ron was waiting by his patrol car. How did it go? About as well as you'd expect. She thinks I'm lying. Park's a good detective, but she's new to town, doesn't know the players yet. Ron lit a cigarette, a habit he'd supposedly quit years ago. What she doesn't know is that Derek Hastings was asking questions about you last week. What kind of questions? Stopped by the station, said he was concerned about his colleague's husband, mentioned you'd been acting erratic and maybe drinking too much. Asked if we'd had any domestic violence calls to your address. The cigarette smoke made my eyes water. Or maybe it was rage. Son of a witch is covering all his bases. Gets worse. I checked with my buddy at the phone company. That burner phone that made the anonymous tip, it was activated using the Wi-Fi at the Starbucks on Main Street. Same Starbucks where your wife meets Derek for their morning coffee dates. Can you prove that? Not in court, but I can make some educated guesses. Ron flicked his cigarette into the gutter. Tom, you need to be very careful here. These people are playing chess while you're playing checkers. That evening, I decided to level the playing field. Miranda came home around 9, looking flushed and satisfied in a way that made my stomach churn. She kissed my cheek like nothing had changed, asked about the kids, mentioned she was exhausted from her long day. How did the Morrison presentation go? I asked. Really well, I think. Derek was brilliant, as usual. She poured herself a glass of wine. We're cautiously optimistic. That's great. You two make a good team. She looked at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just that you've been spending a lot of time together lately. It's work, Tom. I'm trying to build a career here. I know, and I'm proud of you. I moved closer, putting my arms around her waist. She stiffened slightly, but didn't pull away. Miranda, can I ask you something? What? If something was wrong in our marriage, you'd talk to me about it, right? Before doing anything permanent? Her eyes searched my face. Of course. Why would you ask that? Just want to make sure we're solid, with everything that's been happening lately. What's been happening? The police called me in for questioning today about the school incident. Miranda's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. What? Why? Someone told them they saw me near the school Tuesday night around the time the gas leak was reported. That's ridiculous. You were at the shop. I know, but someone seems to think I'm involved. I watched her face carefully. Any idea who might want to cause trouble for me? No, of course not. But her voice was too quick, too high. Tom, you're scaring me. First you keep the kids home from school, now the police think you're involved in some kind of sabotage. I kept the kids home because Ron warned me something was wrong. Turns out he was right. Ron warned you? Miranda set down her wine glass with shaking hands. How did he know? Lucky guess, I suppose. I stepped back, studying her reaction. Unless someone told him. Someone who knew what was going to happen. I don't understand what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. Just trying to figure out who would want to hurt our family. Miranda excused herself early, claiming a headache. I heard her on the phone in our bedroom, voice low and urgent, but couldn't make out the words. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she looked pale and shaken. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight, she announced. I need some space to think. About what? About whether my husband is having some kind of breakdown. After she left, I sat in the dark living room and planned my next move. Derek and Miranda thought they were clever, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated how far a desperate man would go to protect his children. It was time to show them exactly what kind of villain they'd created. I spent the weekend conducting surveillance like some kind of discount private investigator. Miranda stayed at her sister's house, or so she claimed. A drive past Janet's place on Saturday morning revealed no sign of Miranda's car. Instead, I found it parked outside the Hampton Inn on Route 9, right next to Derek's silver BM. The sight of those two vehicles sitting side by side in the hotel parking lot should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt a cold clarity settling over me, like stepping into an air-conditioned building after hours in the summer heat. The marriage was over. The question now is whether I'd have anything left when the dust settled. I took photos with my phone, noting the timestamps, then drove to the nearby Denny's to wait. 3 hours later, Derek and Miranda emerged from the hotel, walking separately to their cars with the studied casualness of people who knew they were being watched. They were wrong about that. I was parked behind a delivery truck with a clear view of the lot. Derek left first, heading toward his house in Millbrook's most expensive subdivision. Miranda sat in her car for 10 minutes, probably texting before driving in the opposite direction. I followed her. She went to Target, then Starbucks, then the grocery store, building an alibi for her day. At each stop, she made purchases, collected receipts, chatted with cashiers who might remember her. It was methodical, calculated, and absolutely chilling in its implication. That evening, she returned home with shopping bags and an elaborate story about helping Janet reorganize her closets. The kids bought it completely. Sophie even thanked her for bringing home the expensive shampoo she'd been asking for. "How was your weekend, honey?" Miranda asked me over dinner, her voice bright with false concern. "Quiet. Did some work around the house." I passed the salad bowl to Max. "How's Janet doing?" "Oh, you know Janet. Still dating that loser from the gym." Miranda launched into a detailed story about her sister's romantic troubles, complete with dialogue and descriptions that would have impressed a fiction writer. I nodded and made appropriate responses while mentally cataloging every lie. The hotel receipt I'd glimpsed in Derek's hand, the way Miranda's hair looked freshly styled despite supposedly spending the day doing manual labor, the fact that she was wearing new lingerie under her casual clothes, I'd noticed when she reached for something on a high shelf. After dinner, while Miranda helped Sophie with homework, I retreated to my office and began planning phase 2 of my investigation. If Derek had a pattern of destroying husbands, there had to be evidence. Men who'd been through what I was experiencing now. It took 3 hours of internet searching, but I found him. Marcus Webb, Derek's previous sufferer in Columbus. His LinkedIn profile showed a dramatic career decline, from operations manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company to general labor at a construction firm. His Facebook page told the rest of the story. Divorce proceedings, custody battles, a gradual slide into financial ruin. I sent him a private message. "Derek Hastings destroyed my life too. Can we talk?" The response came within minutes. "Jesus Christ, he's at it again? Call me." Marcus sounded older than his 43 years, his voice rough with cigarettes and disappointment. He told me a story that was eerily familiar. A wife who started working late, a charming colleague who seemed too interested in their personal lives, a series of incidents that painted Marcus as unstable and potentially dangerous. "It started with little things," Marcus explained. "Sarah would mention to Derek that I'd been drinking more, or that I'd lost my temper about something stupid. Next thing I know, Derek's suggesting she document everything, just in case. In case of what? In case she needed to protect herself and the kids. He convinced her I was becoming abusive, even though I'd never laid a hand on her or anyone else." Marcus coughed, a wet sound that spoke of too many years of stress. "By the time I figured out what was happening, it was too late. What was the final straw?" Someone called the police, said they heard screaming from our house, sounded like domestic violence. When the cops arrived, Sarah had a black eye and a story about how I'd hit her during an argument. My blood went cold. Had you? Hell no. But Derek had been there earlier, comforting her about our marriage problems. Funny how she got hurt right after he left. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Of course, I couldn't prove anything. Just looked like a desperate man making wild accusations. Where's Derek's wife in all this? Doesn't she know what he's doing? Tina? She knows exactly what he's doing. She's the one who finds the targets. The room seemed to spin around me. What do you mean? Derek's got a type. Successful women in unhappy marriages. Tina works as a real estate agent, meets lots of people, hears all their personal business. When she finds someone suitable, she introduces them to Derek at some social function. Makes it look natural. Jesus, they've been running this scam for years. Derek gets his affairs. Tina gets half of whatever assets they can strip from the husband during the divorce. It's a business model. After hanging up with Marcus, I sat in the dark office, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. This wasn't just an affair. It was a carefully orchestrated con game, and my family was the target. I thought about Sophie, asking if we were getting divorced, about Max's worried face when he asked me to promise everything would be okay. These people were going to destroy my children's lives for profit. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. I started with Tina Hastings. A little online research revealed that she'd sold Miranda and Derek's chance meeting hadn't been chance at all. Tina had listed our neighbor's house 6 months ago. She'd spent weeks in the neighborhood, chatting with residents, learning about their personal lives. She would have discovered that Miranda was ambitious, frustrated with small-town life, married to a blue-collar husband who couldn't provide the lifestyle she wanted. Perfect target. I drove past the Hastings house Monday morning, noting the security cameras, the expensive landscaping, the 3-car garage that probably cost more than my annual income. Derek's BMW was gone, but Tina's white Lexus sat in the driveway. Instead of confronting her directly, I did something smarter. I called her office and scheduled an appointment to discuss selling my house. Mr. Brennan, how wonderful to meet you. Tina was all smiles and professional charm when I arrived at her office that afternoon. She was attractive in an artificial way. Too much makeup, too white teeth, designer clothes that screamed money. I understand you're thinking about selling. That's right. My wife and I are going through some changes, and we think it might be time to downsize. I'm so sorry to hear that. Divorce is never easy, especially with children involved. I hadn't mentioned divorce or children. How did you know I had kids? Oh, I just assumed. Most couples in your neighborhood do. She recovered smoothly, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Tell me about your timeline. Are you looking to sell quickly? Depends on the price we can get. My wife seems to think the house is worth more than I do. Well, let's take a look at some comparables. Tina pulled out a folder thick with listings. I've sold several homes in your area recently. Beautiful neighborhood, very desirable. For the next hour, she walked me through market values, staging suggestions, and marketing strategies. She was good at her job, I had to admit. She was also fishing for information about my marriage, my finances, my relationship with Miranda. Your wife isn't here today? She asked casually as we wrapped up. She's at work. Big presentation this week. Oh, what does she do? Marketing. She works with Derek Hastings at Pinnacle Solutions. Tina's smile never wavered, but her pen stopped moving across her notepad. Derek's wonderful, such a dedicated professional. Yeah, they've been working very closely together lately. I'm sure they make a great team. That's what everyone says. I stood up and shook her hand. Thanks for your time, Mrs. Hastings. I'll discuss this with Miranda and get back to you. Please, call me Tina. And Mr. Brennan, I hope everything works out for the best. Walking to my truck, I felt her eyes on my back. By the time I reached home, I was certain she was already on the phone with Derek. I was right. Miranda called 20 minutes later, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Tom, what the hell are you doing meeting with real estate agents? Exploring our options? Isn't that what people do when their marriages are falling apart? Our marriage isn't falling apart, isn't it? When's the last time we had an honest conversation? When's the last time you came home before midnight? When's the last time you looked at me like you love me instead of like I was some obstacle to overcome? Silence on the other end of the line. Miranda, I know about Derek. More silence, then a shaky breath. I don't know what you think you know. I know about the hotel. I know about the emails. I know about the plan to paint me as an abusive husband so you can get custody of the kids and take half of everything I've worked for. Tom, you're scaring me. You sound paranoid. Maybe I am paranoid, or maybe I'm finally paying attention. I kept my voice calm, reasonable. Come home tonight. We need to talk. I can't. I'm working late again. No, you're not, as you are going to meet Derek at the Hampton Inn, just like you did this weekend, just like you've been doing for months. The line went dead. An hour later, Ron knocked on my door. He looked grim. Tom, we need to talk. Someone filed a complaint against you today. What kind of complaint? Maltreatment, stalking, making threats. Ron stepped inside and closed the door. Want to guess who filed it? I didn't need to guess. The trap was closing right on schedule. The complaint was filed by Tina Hastings, claiming I'd made threatening remarks during our meeting and had been following her around town. It was complete fiction, but it didn't matter. Combined with the anonymous tip about the school incident, it painted a picture of escalating behavior that would play perfectly in divorce court. They're building a case, Ron explained as we sat in my kitchen. Classic pattern. Establish a history of erratic behavior, get it on record with law enforcement, then use it to justify whatever comes next. What comes next? Restraining order, probably. Maybe an emergency custody hearing. Once they get the kids away from you, the rest is just paperwork. I thought about Sophie and Max, asleep upstairs, trusting that their father would protect them from the chaos brewing around our family. How long do I have? Not long. Miranda hasn't come home yet, right? No. She's probably with Derek, planning their next move. Or she's with a lawyer. Ron finished his coffee and stood up. Tom, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. These people are professionals. They've done this before, and they know how to make you look like the bad guy. So I should just roll over and let them destroy my life? I'm saying you need to be smarter than they are. After Ron left, I sat alone in the dark house and tried to think like Derek Hastings. He was calculating, patient, methodical. He'd spent months setting up this situation, carefully maneuvering all the pieces into position. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd underestimated how much I loved my children. I spent the night making copies of every document I could find: bank statements, insurance policies, business records, tax returns. If Miranda was planning to clean out our accounts, I wanted to make sure there was a paper trail. At dawn, I drove to my shop and retrieved the security footage from Tuesday night, the night of the anonymous tip. The cameras clearly showed me working inside until nearly 8 p.m., a full 2 hours after the supposed sighting near the school. It wasn't much, but it was something. Miranda didn't come home Tuesday night or Wednesday. When the kids asked where she was, I told them she was helping her sister with a family emergency. Sophie looked skeptical, but Max seemed to accept the explanation. Thursday morning brought a knock on the door from a process server. The restraining order was temporary but comprehensive. I was to have no contact with Tina Hastings, Derek Hastings, or any of their associates. Violation would result in immediate arrest. Dad, what's that? Sophie asked, appearing in the hallway in her school clothes. Just some legal paperwork, nothing for you to worry about. But she was 15, not 5. She could read the fear in my eyes, the tension in my shoulders. Is Mom coming home? I don't know, sweetheart. That afternoon, while the kids were at school, I did something I'd never imagined myself capable of. I broke into Derek's house. It wasn't as dramatic as it sounds. Derek and Miranda were at work, Tina was showing houses across town, and I knew from my surveillance that they had a dog door in the back. The security system was more for show than protection. Wealthy neighborhoods like theirs rarely experienced actual crime. I had maybe 20 minutes before someone might notice my truck in the driveway. I used them well. Derek's home office was a shrine to his own success. Awards, photos with local politicians, and expensive art that probably cost more than most people's cars. But it was his computer that interested me. The password was pathetically simple. His wife's maiden name followed by the year they were married. Rich people, I'd learned, were often careless about security because they'd never had to worry about being sufferers. What I found on Derek's computer was better than I'd hoped. Email chains detailing the entire operation, not just my situation, but previous targets. Marcus in Columbus was just one of many. There were at least 6 other men who'd been systematically destroyed by Derek and Tina's partnership. But the most damning evidence was a folder labeled Brennan Project. It contained detailed psychological profiles of both Miranda and me, financial analyses of our assets, and a timeline for the operation that stretched back 8 months. They'd been planning this since before Miranda and Derek had even met. I photographed everything with my phone, uploaded it to multiple cloud accounts, and emailed copies to myself from 3 different addresses. Then I did something that felt both childish and satisfying. I deleted Derek's files and emptied his trash. On my way out, I stopped in the kitchen and did something Marcus had mentioned during our conversation. I bought a bag of frozen shrimp on the way over, and I stuffed them into the air conditioning vents throughout the house. In a week, the place would smell like a fishing boat in August. That evening, Miranda finally came home. She looked tired and stressed, her usual polish was slightly tarnished. The kids were ecstatic to see her, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. She was going to lose them too, in the end. "We need to talk," she said after Sophie and Max had gone to bed. "I agree." We sat in the living room like strangers, the space between us on the couch feeling like an ocean. Miranda twisted her wedding ring, a gesture I remembered from our early years together when she was nervous about something. "Tom, I want you to know that I never meant for things to get this complicated." "Which things, the affair or the conspiracy to frame me for domestic violence?" She flinched. "It's not like that." "Then tell me what it's like. Derek and I, we have feelings for each other. Real feelings. But we're both married, both have responsibilities. We were trying to figure out how to handle the situation without hurting anyone. By destroying my reputation and stealing my children? By making a clean break. Tom, our marriage has been over for years. We both know that. We're just going through the motions. So you decided to make me the villain. No one was supposed to get hurt. The school thing was just meant to complicate things, make you look unstable so the divorce would be easier." I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for 17 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "Miranda, do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into?" "What do you mean?" "Derek's done this before. Multiple times. You're not his first affair, and you won't be his last." "That's not true. His wife, Tina, helps him find targets. Wealthy women in unhappy marriages. They seduce you, destroy your husband, take half the assets in the divorce, then move on to the next mark." Miranda's face went pale. "You're lying." "I have emails, Miranda. Financial records, a whole folder on Derek's computer labeled Brennan Project. You're not his lover. You're his sufferer." She was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and uncertain. "Even if that were true, it doesn't change anything between us, doesn't it? Tom, I can't go back to the way things were. I can't pretend to be happy in this life anymore." "Then let's end it honestly. No false accusations, no custody battles, no destroyed reputations. We'll split everything fairly, share custody of the kids, and move on with our lives." "It's too late for that." "Why?" "Because Derek says you'll never agree to a fair settlement. He says men like you always fight dirty when they're cornered." "Men like me? Blue-collar men who feel entitled to everything they've built, even when their wives contributed just as much." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "Is that really how you see me? I see you as someone who's going to make this as difficult as possible. Miranda, I'm offering you an easy divorce, no contests, no fighting, no lawyers. Why won't you take it?" She looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Because Derek says you're lying. He says you'll change your mind once the papers are filed, and then we'll be stuck in a long, expensive battle anyway." "And you believe him over me?" "I believe he knows more about these situations than you do." That's when I understood. Derek hadn't just seduced my wife, he'd completely reprogrammed her. She genuinely believed that I was the threat, that Derek was protecting her from my inevitable betrayal. "Miranda, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Derek Hastings is not who you think he is. He's a hunter, and you're his prey. If you don't believe me, ask him about Marcus Webb in Columbus. Ask him about the other women he's done this to. I'm not going to spy on Derek based on your paranoid fantasies. Then ask Tina. Ask her how their business model works. Tom, you're scaring me. This is exactly the kind of behavior Derek warned me about." I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the futility of it all. "Get out!" "What? Get out of my house. Go back to your hotel room, go back to Derek, go wherever you want. But don't come back here until you're ready to have an honest conversation. Tom, this is my house too. Not anymore. You made your choice. Live with it. After she left, I called Ron and told him what I'd found on Derek's computer. He listened without interruption, then sighed heavily. Tom, this is good information, but it's also illegally obtained. We can't use it in court. What about the other sufferers? Can't they testify about Derek's pattern? Maybe, but that's a long shot, and it doesn't help your immediate situation. So what do? You prepare for war, because that's what this is now. Friday morning brought news that made my blood run cold. Sophie didn't come down for breakfast, and when I went to check on her, I found her room empty. A note on her pillow, written in Miranda's handwriting, explained that she'd picked up both kids early for a special weekend trip to visit their grandmother in Cincinnati. My mother-in-law lived in a retirement community that didn't allow overnight guests under 18. Miranda was lying, which meant Sophie and Max were somewhere else entirely. I called Miranda's phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, emailing, even calling her office. Nothing. Ron arrived within minutes of my panicked phone call, still in his patrol uniform from the night shift. When did you last see the kids? Last night at dinner. They went to bed around 9:30. I checked on them before I went to sleep. They were both in their rooms. Any sign of forced entry? No, Miranda has a key. Ron examined Sophie's room, noting that some of her clothes were missing, along with her favorite stuffed animal and her phone charger. Max's room told the same story. A few items gone, but not enough to suggest a permanent move. She's keeping them somewhere close, Ron concluded. Probably wants to be able to bring them back quickly if things go wrong. Or she's planning to disappear with them entirely. That's kidnapping, even if she's their mother. We can file charges. And how long will it take to find them? Hours, days, weeks? Ron's expression was grim. I don't know. I spent the day calling every hotel, motel, and bed and breakfast within a 50-mile radius. No one had seen Miranda or the kids. I drove past Derek's house, Tina's office, even the Pinnacle Solutions building downtown. No sign of my children anywhere. By evening, I was ready to do something desperate. That's when my phone rang. Tom? It was Sophie, her voice small and scared. Sophie, where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine. Max is fine too, but Mom says we can't come home yet. Why not? She says you're sick, that you might hurt us if we come back. My heart broke a little more. Sophie, I would never hurt you or your brother. You know that, right? I know, Dad, but Mom's really scared. She's been crying a lot. Where are you staying? I'm not supposed to tell you. Mom made me promise. Sweetheart, I need to know that you're safe. There was a long pause. Then Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. We're at a hotel. The Hampton Inn on Route 9, room 237, the same hotel where I'd photographed Miranda and Derek's cars. Is Derek there with you? Sometimes. He brings us food and stuff. Mom says he's helping us stay safe until the lawyers can figure everything out. Sophie, listen to me very carefully. I'm going to come get you and Max tonight. Dad, no. Mom says if you try to take us, she'll have to call the police. She says you could go to jail. I'm your father. I have just as much right to be with you as she does. But the restraining order, my blood went cold. What restraining order? The one Derek showed us. It says you can't come near us because you might be dangerous. There was no restraining order against me seeing my own children. Derek was showing them fake legal documents to keep them compliant. Sophie, that paper isn't real. Derek is lying to you and your mother. I have to go. Someone's coming back. The line went dead. I sat in my truck outside the Hampton Inn for 2 hours, watching room 237's window. The lights were on, and occasionally I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. My children were 50 yards away, and I couldn't reach them. At 10 p.m., Derek's BMW pulled into the parking lot. He got out carrying bags from McDonald's and walked casually to the room, like a man without a care in the world. He knocked, the door opened, and I caught a glimpse of Miranda before it closed again. That's when I realized Derek wasn't just hiding my family. He was holding them hostage. I called Ron. I found them. Where? Hampton Inn, Route 9. Derek's with them. Tom, you can't just storm in there and take the kids. Legally, Miranda has as much right to them as you do. She's keeping them isolated, filling their heads with lies about me being dangerous. How is that legal? It's not, but proving it is complicated. You need a lawyer, not a rescue mission. I don't have time for lawyers. Tom, listen to me. If you go in there and take those kids by force, you'll be playing right into their hands. They want you to look unstable, remember? I knew Ron was right, but every instinct I had was screaming at me to kick down that hotel room door and take my children home. Instead, I did something smarter. I called Marcus Webb. Marcus, it's Tom Brennan. I need your help. What's going on? Derek's got my kids. He's convinced my wife that I'm dangerous, and now they're hiding from me in a hotel room. Jesus. It's escalating faster than usual. What do you mean? With me, Derek took months to build up to the final play. Sounds like he's rushing things with you. Why would he rush? Maybe because you're fighting back. Most of his targets just roll over and accept what's happening. You're making him work for it. I thought about the deleted files on Derek's computer, the evidence I'd gathered, the conversations with other sufferers. Marcus, what was Derek's endgame with you? What was he ultimately trying to accomplish? Complete destruction. He didn't just want my wife and half my assets. He wanted me broken, discredited, maybe even in prison. The more thoroughly he destroyed me, the less likely I was to cause problems later. So this isn't just about money. Money's part of it, but Derek gets off on the control, on proving he's smarter than everyone else. Marcus paused. Tom, you need to be very careful. If Derek feels cornered, he might do something extreme. Like what? Like make sure you're not around to tell your side of the story. After hanging up with Marcus, I sat in the hotel parking lot and tried to think like Derek Hastings. He was methodical, calculating, always 3 steps ahead. But he was also arrogant, convinced of his own superiority. That arrogance might be his weakness. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken of Derek's computer files. Buried in the email chains was something I'd overlooked before, a reference to the Cincinnati option. Cincinnati, where Miranda had supposedly taken the kids to visit their grandmother. I called the retirement home, where my mother-in-law lived. The night supervisor confirmed that Mrs. Patterson was in her room alone and hadn't had any visitors in weeks. So where was Miranda planning to take Sophie and Max? And why had Derek called it the Cincinnati option? It took another hour of digging through the stolen files, but I finally found my answer. Derek had a contact in Cincinnati, a lawyer who specialized in emergency custody cases, particularly those involving allegations of domestic violence. The plan was becoming clear. Miranda would take the kids to Cincinnati, file for emergency custody in Ohio courts, and claim I was an immediate threat to their safety. By the time I could respond legally, Derek would have weeks or months to solidify the case against me. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They were still in Millbrook, still within my reach. I drove home and spent the night preparing for the most important performance of my life. If Derek wanted to play psychological games, I was going to give him a masterclass in manipulation. The next morning, I called Miranda's phone. This time, she answered. Tom, you need to stop calling. Miranda, we need to talk. I've discovered something about Derek that you need to know. I'm not falling for your lies. It's not lies, it's documentation. Financial records, emails, evidence of at least 6 other women he's done this to. You're delusional. Then prove me wrong. Meet me somewhere public, bring Derek if you want. And let me show you what I found. There was a long pause. What kind of documentation? Bank records showing payments to divorce lawyers, private investigators, even a few judges. Email chains discussing strategy for destroying husbands. Photos of Derek with other women in situations identical to yours. That's impossible. 1 hour, the Starbucks on Main Street. Bring Derek, bring a lawyer, bring whoever you want. But look at the evidence before you take my children to Cincinnati. Another pause. How did you know about Cincinnati? Because I know about everything, Miranda. The question is whether you're brave enough to face the truth. She hung up, but I knew she'd be there. Derek's greatest weakness was his need to be the smartest person in the room. He wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity to prove me wrong. I arrived at Starbucks 30 minutes early and chose a table near the window with clear sightlines to the parking lot. At exactly 11 a.m., Derek's BMW pulled up. He got out alone, looked around carefully, then walked inside. Tom. He sat down across from me, his expensive suit and confident smile intact. Miranda's not coming. She's too upset to deal with your maltreatment. Where are my children, Derek? Safe, which is more than they'd be with you right now. You mean safe from the restraining order that doesn't exist? Safe from the domestic violence charges you haven't filed? Safe from the dangerous father who's never raised a hand to anyone? Derek's smile flickered slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken from his computer. Really? because I have some interesting reading material here. For the first time since I'd met him, Derek Hastings looked genuinely surprised. Where did you get those? Your home office. Nice security system, by the way. Very impressive. You broke into my house. I visited your house. The door was open. I scrolled through the photos, showing him images of his own emails. Want to explain the Brennan Project folder to me? Derek's composure was cracking. Those files are private communications between my wife and me. Your wife who helps you select targets. Your wife who's been running this con with you for years. I leaned forward. Derek, I know about Marcus Webb. I know about the others. I know this whole thing is a business model for you. You don't know anything. I know you're about to lose everything. I put my phone away and smiled. See, while you've been playing house with my wife and terrorizing my children, I've been doing some research. Turns out several of your previous sufferers are very interested in talking to law enforcement about your methods. You're bluffing, am I? Marcus Webb is driving down from Cleveland tomorrow. He's bringing documentation of everything you did to his family. The other men you've destroyed are comparing notes, Derek. They're building a case. Derek stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Sit down. My voice was quiet but hard. We're not finished. I don't have to listen to your paranoid fantasies. You do if you want to see your own children again. Derek froze. What did you say? Your kids, Derek. The ones you've been neglecting while you play house with my wife. The ones who are going to be very interested to learn what Daddy really does for a living. You stay away from my family. Why? They're not off limits the way mine should have been. I stood up and moved closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to bring my children home. You're going to end whatever hold you have over my wife. And you're going to disappear from our lives permanently. Or what? Or I'm going to destroy you the same way you've destroyed other men, except I'm going to do it better because I'm not motivated by greed or ego. I'm motivated by love for my children. Derek's face had gone pale. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. I smiled. The difference is I keep my promises. I walked out of Starbucks, leaving Derek sitting alone at our table, staring at his phone with shaking hands. Phase 1 of my counterattack was complete. Now came the hard part. An epilogue. The reckoning. 3 days later, Sophie and Max came home. Miranda brought them back on a Tuesday evening, looking haggard and defeated. She didn't offer explanations or apologies, just hugged the kids and told them to pack some clothes. She'd be staying at her sister's for a while. For how long? Max asked. I don't know, sweetheart. Your father and I need to work some things out. After she left, I sat down with Sophie and Max in the living room. They deserved to know the truth, or at least as much of it as they could handle. Your mother and I are getting divorced, I said simply. It's not because of anything you did, and it doesn't mean we love you any less. Is it because of Derek? Sophie asked. At 15, she was old enough to have figured out some of what was happening. Partly, but mostly it's because your mother and I want different things from life, and we can't figure out how to want the same things anymore. Will we have to choose between you? Max's voice was small. No, you'll live with me during the school year and spend summers with your mother. We've already worked it out. That was mostly true. Miranda had agreed to my custody proposal after Derek had suddenly decided to take a step back from their relationship. Apparently, my conversation with his wife Tina had been very illuminating. I'd visited Tina 3 days after my confrontation with Derek, bringing with me printed copies of all the evidence I'd found on his computer. She'd listened in silence as I explained how her husband's business trips were actually elaborate seductions, how their comfortable lifestyle was built on the financial ruin of innocent families. Mrs. Hastings, I'd concluded, your husband is a hunter, and you're his accomplice. Tina had stared at the documents for a long time before speaking. What do you want? I want my family left alone. I want Derek to end his relationship with my wife. And I want you both to disappear from our lives permanently. And if we don't, then I share this evidence with every law enforcement agency in 3 states, along with contact information for Derek's previous sufferers. I also share it with your real estate clients, your neighbors, your church, and anyone else who might be interested to know what kind of people you really are. Tina had made her choice quickly. By the end of that week, Derek and Miranda's affair was over and the Hastings house was on the market. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly civil. Miranda kept her job at Pinnacle Solutions, though Derek had mysteriously left the company to pursue other opportunities. She moved to a small apartment across town and seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding her relationship with Sophie and Max. We never talked about what had really happened. Miranda maintained that Derek had been trying to help her through a difficult time, and I let her keep that fiction. The truth, that she'd been manipulated by a professional con artist, would have been too devastating for her to accept. 6 months later, I was cleaning out my home office when I found the folder of evidence I'd collected against Derek. Bank statements, emails, photographs, witness statements from his previous sufferers. Enough documentation to send him to prison for fraud, extortion, and a dozen other charges. I fed it all into the paper shredder. Derek Hastings had moved to Florida, according to Ron's sources. His marriage to Tina had ended in an expensive divorce, and he was reportedly working as a car salesman in Tampa. The hunter had become just another middle-aged man starting over with nothing. That was punishment enough. Sophie graduated from high school with honors and earned a full scholarship to Ohio State. Max made the varsity baseball team as a sophomore and was already being scouted by college recruiters. Miranda remarried, a quiet accountant who seemed to genuinely care about her and treated my children with respect. I never remarried. I dated occasionally, but I'd learned to be cautious about trusting people with my heart. Some wounds heal completely. Others just teach you to be more careful. On a warm evening in late September, I was sitting on my front porch when Ron walked over from next door. He was retired now, spending his days fishing and complaining about the current state of law enforcement. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you'd handled things differently?" he asked, settling into the chair beside mine. "You mean if I'd let Derek destroy my life?" "I mean if you'd played by the rules, gone through lawyers, fought it out in court, trusted the system to protect you." I thought about that for a moment. I'd have lost everything. My kids, my business, my reputation. Derek would have moved on to the next sufferer, and Miranda would have figured out too late what kind of man she'd gotten involved with. Instead, you became the villain. I became what I needed to become to protect my family. Ron nodded slowly. "No regrets?" I looked across the street at Mrs. Blevins watering her flowers, at the Henderson kids playing basketball in their driveway, at the quiet suburban scene that had almost been destroyed by a hunter in an expensive suit. None at all. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of children laughing, the eternal sound of innocence preserved. I had kept my promise to my children. I had protected them from the monsters who wear human faces and speak in gentle voices. I had learned that sometimes being a good man means being willing to be seen as the villain. And I had discovered that the most dangerous enemies are the ones who convince you they're trying to help. Derek Hastings had taught me that love without vigilance is just vulnerability waiting to be exploited. He'd shown me that evil doesn't always announce itself with dramatic gestures. Sometimes it arrives with a smile and a business card, offering to solve problems it created. But he'd also taught me something else, that ordinary men are capable of extraordinary things when the people they love are threatened. That intelligence and determination can triumph over wealth and connections. That sometimes the only way to defeat a monster is to become something monstrous yourself. I never saw Derek Hastings again, but I never forgot the lesson he taught me about the villain next door, and the villain that lives inside all of us, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes that villain is exactly what the world needs,